in Iran. So what more should the U.S. and other Western nations be doing now? John Bolton is former U.S. ambassador to the UN and a Fox News contributor. Great to have you on as always, especially when we talk Iran. I mean, now that the hardliners are reinserting control, Ahmadinejad is cracking the whip, if you will. Is there anything more the U.S. or the West could or should do?
Well, I think this particular phase of the resistance is pretty much over. Mousavi has also reportedly said in the past couple of days that he won't agree to any demonstrations where there's not official permission. I don't think we're going to see much official permission. So basically, I think this dispute over the election is over. The challenge to the regime's legitimacy has been suppressed this time, but the long-term opposition to the regime remains, and I wish it were the Obama administration's policy to support overthrowing the Islamic Revolution, because I think the people have demonstrated they're ready for it.
It's interesting now that President Obama has threatened to make President Ahmadinejad rather, is threatening to make President Obama regret his condemnation of the violence in Iran. Many people think that President Obama hasn't said enough. I mean, since Iran's disputed election, it's no secret President Obama has actually been noticeably silent. And you write in your op-ed piece on Iran entitled "The Mullahs Must Go," which ran yesterday in the LA Times, that President Obama has been equally emphatic about not being perceived as meddling in Iran's internal affair, but you also go on to write, it is the president's underlying policies that are wrong, not just his rhetoric. What do you mean by that?
Well, our president has consistently demonstrated he still wants negotiation with the regime in Tehran over their nuclear weapons program. That's why he was cautious in his remarks about the election, and that's why even in the face of brutality, he never abandoned the policy of negotiation. So what Ahmadinejad is doing is sort of sticking his thumb in the president's eye and saying it's going to be harder now for you to get negotiation. You're going to have to climb down off your rhetoric. So really, I think the U.S. is left with the worst of both worlds. We didn't affect events in Iran, and the president's still determined to try and chit-chat Iran out of its nuclear weapons program.
So you think that our relationship with Iran now is worse off than it was before the presidential election?
Well, I think President Obama has not learned from the election. You know, any regime that's capable of committing the kind of electoral fraud that the regime in Iran did is also perfectly prepared to lie about its nuclear weapons program. And one reason I just don't think negotiation with Iran over that program is going to make any progress.
Yeah, David Townsend on Twitter writes, there are no moderates in the Iranian government, only hand-chosen candidates. Freedom in Iran is an illusion without changing government. Do you think it's an illusion to all of Iran's young people, which you point out makes up about 2/3 of the population that are under the age of 30? And you say that they know that they could have a much freer life if they could only overturn the mullah's strict rule. The question is, have the mullahs gotten to Mousavi, the opposition candidate?
Well, I don't think Mousavi was ever the voice of liberalism. You know, although he says he still wants a new election, he's held that position for 2 weeks. And in a revolutionary moment, a leader that stands still is going to get overtaken. So I think the demonstrations show how unpopular the regime is, but I think they need outside assistance. I think the U.S. and others could give it to them, but that is not President Obama's policy. He has gone out of his way to say we're not trying to meddle, not that it's done him a lot of good given Ahmadinejad's reaction. Our president wants negotiation over the nuclear weapons, and that's the bottom line.
Yeah, and you know what, the bottom line regarding negotiation of nuclear weapons, which I think is sort of the center stone here, which is also being overlooked because of this presidential election. President Obama, during his campaign, saying he wanted to sit down with Ahmadinejad and talk without setting any sort of guidelines. That's probably off the table.
Well, I think what Ahmadinejad will do is raise the price because he knows how much Obama wants those negotiations. Yeah. And if you look at the communique by the G8 foreign ministers just issued yesterday, they're still talking about negotiations with Iran.
All right, Ambassador John Bolton, always great to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Greg.